Who knows, maybe we could get news tomorrow that renders all this elaboration inaccurate. I was also going to address how the lack of new official Chipmunk content could affect my channel long term, but I'm going to save that for my next update video, which I will probably get around to doing within the next month. Yeah, sorry, I can explain. Hey guys, Granditamias here, and welcome back to another channel update. And I've got a big one this time, well, also was last time, so hopefully that'll make up for how long it's been. I know a lot of you want me to talk about the Alvin and the Chipmunks Elaborations series, which I'll get to in a jiffy, but first I have an announcement and something else I want to address. And as is usual now in these update videos, I have time codes for each topic, so feel free to skip around based on what you're interested in. First, I might be slower on uploads for a while, since I need to do everything that I can to make sure that I pass organic chemistry, and in December I will be going out of the country. I will be spending Christmas and New Year's with some relatives down in Mexico, so I've been working on my Spanish. And this will end up being practice for me when I eventually go to Peru next summer. I'll be sure to bring back pictures, and who knows, perhaps I'll even make videos about these trips. With any luck, I might have time to prepare at least one video ahead of schedule to tie you guys over until I get back. Something I want to say in regards to all of my videos in general is the comedy. You may have noticed in some of my recent uploads, I've added little skits or memes, sometimes as an intro, outro, or in the middle, as well as just regular jokes I make while elaborating. It's nothing new, but I've been doing it more often just to see if y'all like it. If not, I'll dial it back a bit and stick to the facts and commentary. Okay, now on to the Alvin and the Chipmunks Elaborations stuff. One of the reasons I held off making this video was because I wanted to make sure that I had enough variety in Chipmunk questions for the comment response section. Some of y'all may have noticed new Chipmunk content has only been coming out once every other upload, or less even. And I know I talked about some of this in the last update, but it's worth addressing again. If you're concerned because the future of the CGI series is currently up in the air, that I'm becoming less interested in the Alvin and the Chipmunks franchise and whether it'll still be the primary focus of the channel, I can put those concerns to rest. I'd like to make a video in the future about why I created this series and how I got into the Chipmunk fan community, but for now I can assure you I have not lost my motivation to continue it. Yet. I don't know exactly what the future holds for me, especially since I am expected to be done with college by next summer. While I don't have any plans to stop making videos, my pursuit and acquisition of a career could affect that in the future. But that's still a ways off and would affect all of my videos as a whole, not just the Alvin and the Chipmunks ones. Regardless of whether or not the CGI series has ended and the franchise is currently dormant, the 65-year history of Alvin and the Chipmunks offers more than enough juicy topics for me to continue for possibly another 2 years at least. And that's a conservative estimate, even if I did only stick to Chipmunk videos. I have plenty of ideas now, some that I've mentioned in previous videos, and I'm sure to think of more in addition to suggestions from the comments. So yeah, I know it's largely the same as what I said last time, but expect more Chipmunk content. I'll try to make it more frequent, or at least keep things balanced. Hypothetically, even if Alvin and the Chipmunks was no longer the core of this channel, or I stopped the Elaboration series altogether, I'd still be called Granditamias. I mean, even though I created that name because of the Chipmunks, it's not intrinsically tied to the franchise officially, plus, it's just kind of stuck for me. Also, since I still get comments about this, I want to remind you all that as I said in the last update video, I cancelled the iceberg project. I no longer have any interest in making one, and that was a bit too ambitious for me to throw out there at the time. As for some of my recent elaborations, they have had some great highlights, like my Pride Month video. It was really fun to get to do that one as a collaboration with Lauren and Mel, and I've been brainstorming ideas for more collab opportunities in the future, maybe with one or both of them again, or perhaps other Chipmunk content creators. I'm also very proud of how some of my other elaborations turned out, like the Action one and the CGI series Humans one. Those didn't get as many views as I thought, so if you haven't seen them, be sure to check them out. Okay, moving on to updates about the non-Chipmunk stuff, I first want to say that I currently don't have any plans to do any more trailer reactions for upcoming movies. Sonic Movie 3 and the animated Transformers movie next year are possibilities, but overall, the reaction vids aren't getting as many views. It's a really hard decision for me to cancel those, but it seems like you guys are more interested in me giving analyses on particular topics about those movies after the fact. Sonic videos, I know I've only done that one about Rouge since the last update. There are other characters I could talk about potentially appearing, but I don't know how they could, given what little we know about the third movie so far. And I feel like I already covered most or all of the potential plot points that the second film left on. Besides, Sonic Movie 3 isn't coming out until the end of next year, so I like to wait until some more substantial news drops. I'll keep thinking, but the likelihood of me making another Sonic video by the end of this year are slim. Okay, next, the Transformers videos. My preconceptions and spoiler videos for Rise of the Beasts did not do as well as I thought, much like the trailer reactions. In fact, collectively, those two videos only got one comment. But my regular videos about that and the Prime series have done well, surprisingly. I do have my next Transformers video already written. I'm not sure when I'm going to get around to it, but it does relate to Rise of the Beasts and the future of the movies. I'll say that much. And lastly, before I get to the comment response, I gotta talk about my recent and probably unhealthy obsession with a certain blue cephalopod. No, not that one. This one. If you guys haven't been aware the past few months, I love Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken, as evident from the fact that I made not one, but 2 videos on it. Honestly, I think a lot of you guys who watch my Alvin and the Chipmunks content would also be the kind of people who would enjoy this movie. Those videos have been some of my most viewed content on the channel for a while, so I've been very tempted to make more videos about the movie. And I already have ideas relating to its production and explaining aspects or theories, but as I said at the end of my second video, I'm not sure if I want to do that unless Ruby Gillman actually becomes a franchise by way of a TV show or a sequel movie. Both of which, the latter especially, are unlikely given the massive financial L that this movie took. I'd just be talking about a dead IP. Then again, so are the Chipmunks at the moment. But from the reception of those videos, I have been considering talking about other DreamWorks properties as well, especially Madagascar. So yeah, this movie's great. I've seen it at least 50 times. Check it out if you haven't, and I'm probably going to cover several comments about it in the next section. Speaking of which, let's get to that, starting with the Alvin and the Chipmunks videos. Okay, before I begin, I just want to say that I hate the way that YouTube doesn't display the channel name above the comments anymore, and instead just uses the @ tag, so forgive me if I mispronounce or shorten some of these names. Starting off here with Muguvi Jake. What are your top 3 favorite Alvin and the Chipmunks characters? Well, it depends on continuity. Like, for example, in the live-action films, Jeanette is my favorite of the Chipettes, but in everything else, Eleanor is my favorite of the Chipettes. If we're talking about the CGI series, though, Alvin would be number 3, Eleanor would be number 2, and Simon would be number 1. Yeah, Simon's always going to be number 1 for me, because I relate to him because, he likes science. Eleanor, I already did a whole video about explaining why I like her in this continuity. And Alvin, well, I don't know, it's just, I think he has a lot of potential, and he's very rebellious. There are certain aspects of that I'd like to see touched on more, but, I don't know, I'll probably do a video breaking down Alvin's character at some point. Okay, this next comment comes from Alex Hurtado, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right, who has been a regular presence on my Discord server and in the comments on all of my elaboration videos, so special shout out to him. He says, I'd love to see a serialized show for an Alvin and the Chipmunks reboot, though I'd want the stakes to be high. I'd also want it to be lighthearted enough for kids, something like Gravity Falls and Amphibia. Well, I've never seen Amphibia, but I have seen Gravity Falls, and yeah, I really like the tone of that show and how there was intercontinuity between episodes. And while I wouldn't see them solving mysteries as often as the characters in Gravity Falls do, I do think that it's something that the Chipmunks should explore a little more of. There is also another comment from Alex that I wanted to bring up. What was wrong with Bathroom Bully, if you don't mind me asking? Well, in a word, everything. It could probably take a whole video for me to properly explain why Bathroom Bully is just so bad. If you haven't seen it, spoilers by the way, but not that it matters. If you haven't seen this episode, definitely do not. But yeah, it devalues the characters, particularly Simon, for the sake of making a joke, and the situation that actually causes the conflict of the episode is very hard to believe in the first place. The entire plot of this episode hinges on the fact that there's only one boys' bathroom at this school. But like I said years ago, their high school exists in real life, and I've never been to Santa Barbara High School, but I am fairly certain that they have more than one boys' bathroom. So yeah, not only can Derek not be in all of those places at once, but at this point in the series, I don't think Simon would have been one to believe Derek's threat as legitimate. And even if he did, it could have easily been solved by talking to the teacher. Tifa Cute Cat, who is another prominent member on my Discord server, says, I don't know if this is a good idea or not, but I hope that they keep Miss Kroner in a future series for Alvin and the Chipmunks. She's just a nice contrast to Miss Miller, and I feel there is more to her than we see. I feel like she's just that cold, grumpy, elderly character with that dynamic with the happy elder who bakes you cookies, Miss Miller. But this is my opinion, you can completely disagree. And no, I actually do agree. Well, I wouldn't mind Miss Kroner in particular being reincarnated. And honestly, I feel like I should have elaborated even more on Miss Kroner in the CGI series, because there's also the episode Theodore's Calling, which also does some great character building for her, as well as Theodore. R. James says, I love the concept of chipmunks aging faster than humans as well. I'd love to see an origin story in the new 2015 3D cartoon. Not sure if they will, though. I'm pretty unbothered by the whole age thing, though. They're still the same chipmunks that we know and love. I'm just used to Alvin being the oldest, but the fact that Simon is the oldest in the newest cartoon works too. I think it's cute. Yeah, I totally agree. I really don't think it matters in the grand scheme of things whether Simon or Alvin is the oldest, because they're still going to be telling the same kinds of stories anyway. They're always going to be at odds, and we'll always have Theodore to be the naive and cute one. Jenna Matthews says, I could go for some more daring rescues and chase scenes. Also, Ellie's potential isn't being utilized because she's more action-oriented. More action could definitely benefit her and give her more to do in the plots. And I really like this comment because it makes me realize something that I overlooked, and that is Ellie being more action-oriented, making her possibly less relatable to children, and that's why the show doesn't use her very often. I mean, I personally have never really seen the problem with that, but I know it's a complaint that people have about many other types of franchises. I think the problem could be the cause that characters are fighting for. Like, the story would need a legitimate reason to have characters fight so that it's not just mindless action, but at the same time the story is trying to appeal to children, so I could see where the concern from the creators could come from, and that they don't know how to find the right balance yet. PinguFan10 says, I think you could make a video discussing Bagdasarian Productions suing Capitol Records, because they were using Alvin and the Chipmunks music without permission. I saw that on Wikipedia. Please make a video about that. Thank you for the suggestion, but honestly, I don't feel like there's much of a reason to, because Wikipedia has some pretty good documentation on the Capitol Records cases, and I know I made a video, or podcast-style elaboration many years ago about the Universal case, but that was much bigger, and even then, that video was only about 4 minutes long, and my videos today are significantly longer than that, so I don't think I'm going to make any more videos about court cases. Ad1064 says, Simone has a crush with Mandy in Alvin and the Chipmunks. Wait, Simone exists in the CGI continuity? That's news to me. Also, you misspelled Mandy. It's Mandy with an I. They make a joke about that in the episode. Catelyn Sparkle says, I'm not too sure about the Chipmunks and Chipettes being part of the LGBTQ+, although I do support it. Don't get me wrong. Now, I got several comments like this, and while I wasn't expecting this kind of feedback on such a big level, I completely understand it. The shipping community around this fandom has always been so dead set on the Chipmunks being paired with the Chipettes that it's really hard to imagine them not being straight. I'm not saying they need to change in that regard, and either way, I personally don't care that much since I'm not a shipper, but this is one of the reasons why my collaborators and I push the whole more Chipmunks in the franchise thing. Sane Fan says, the Chipmunks getting lost in Tent City, San Francisco? A movie like that, to put it mildly, would have to be rated NC-17 for an accurate portrayal. Okay, so this is referring to when I mentioned San Francisco in that video, and for those who don't know, San Francisco back in the 80s and even now does have a large homeless population, but honestly, the real thing that I don't take issue with, but I want to focus on in this comment is the accurate portrayal part. I wouldn't expect them to accurately portray things in real life, even cities that have some sketchy stuff going on. I just thought I'd mention San Francisco because, it has the Golden Gate Bridge, a very famous landmark, and it'd be cool to see the Chipmunks adventuring near that. Joe asks, why do you think Alvin's height changed from being the shortest in the 60s era and middle height in the 80s onwards? So personally, I think the answer is twofold, and both reasons are kind of simple, really. The first is that in the 60s, the animation was really stylized, so they could get away with these crazy designs, and they just thought to give Alvin some character by making him look the smallest, which honestly makes it kind of funny when he talks back to Dave so much. The other reason, I think, is because of Theodore. There was a change in his characterization from the 60s to the 80s, where he became, the naive, sweet one, and I guess they just wanted to make him look smaller, cuter, more diminutive. Plus, they also changed Alvin's personality in the 80s to be more assertive and rebellious. So, yeah, that's why I think Alvin became the middle height from the 80s onward. Mr. Goodboy says, I'd like to see a new Spider-Verse or Puss in Boots 2 styled CG film nowadays. I think that'd be cool. Well, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to it, but in all honesty, animation style doesn't really matter to me as long as the character designs look good. And I talk more about my general opinions on the Spider-Verse style animation in my Ruby Gillman video, so definitely check that out if you haven't. But I honestly think it would have been cool if we had gotten an animated Alvin and the Chipmunks film that was something like the Peanuts movie that was released by Blue Sky, which is owned by Fox, or was before they went out of business. Thanks a lot, Disney. But yeah, I did like the animation in that film, and that was years before Spider-Verse, so I kind of wish that they had done something similar, but with the 1980s designs of the Alvin and the Chipmunks characters. Just imagine, if we were living in an alternate timeline where Disney never bought Fox, this could have been a possibility, provided that Bagdasarian would have been willing to extend their contract with Fox. Okay, that wraps up all the Alvin and the Chipmunks questions I wanted to cover. First Transformers question, even though it's actually a Ninja Turtles question, but also kind of a Chipmunk question for a reason you'll soon understand. Can you do a video talking about the ages of the Ninja Turtles? Yeah, I know I brought up TMNT in that video a few times, but aside from the 2012 series and some of the movies, I'm not really into that franchise. I saw the new animated one this year, and it was alright, and again, another Spider-Verse style movie. But yeah, I don't have any plans to branch out into TMNT stuff, let alone talk about their ages. Which I think was a jab at my Alvin and the Chipmunks videos, where I have talked about the debate surrounding the ages of those characters, and it's become something of a meme on this channel. Joshua says, I think The Rock voicing him was the worst thing to happen to Cliffjumper. You know, there is this stigma in the Transformers fandom that Cliffjumper constantly dies, even though that's not exactly true. In fact, he survived Generation 1. But yeah, I do think that Transformers Prime started that trend of Cliffjumper dying, and yeah, I really dislike it. But who knows, maybe if he had lived all the way through that show, then that could have influenced the Bumblebee movie later down the line to not kill off the character, since he probably could have become more popular. And the thing that I find funny about this is that they got a different actor to voice Cliffjumper in the episode Out of the Past, instead of bringing back Dwayne Johnson, so why didn't they just have that actor to begin with? Bryce Hayes says, Dreadwing was the prime counterpart to Dinobot. He was the only true Decepticon that actually believed in the cause and didn't let Megatron's greed for power blind him. I also like how he didn't want to join the Autobots either, because he just no longer wanted to be part of the now pointless war. His only true enemy this whole time was Starscream. You know, the way I see it, Dreadwing and Skyquake probably joined the Decepticons because they were like, wow, I like that cause. I'll support it because I agree with Megatron that this High Council government should be torn down. Optimus, of course, didn't agree with that, but admired their loyalty and knew that it would be wasted since Megatron became power-hungry and wouldn't appreciate them in the end. Which is why Optimus kept offering them the chance to join the Autobots, instead of offering the same to the Viacons or any of the other higher-ranking members of the Decepticons. I always found that weird when I was a kid, but it definitely makes sense to me now. And yeah, I do think leaving would have been the best choice for Dreadwing. He probably had too much pride for the cause of Megatron's original plan to fight the corrupt government, and would have felt shameful for doing a complete 180 on that. But again, maybe Optimus could have helped him grow past that and learn the true meaning of honor. And finally, I've been waiting for this segment, the Ruby Gillman questions. C. Taco says, if Ruby Gillman does get a TV series, I think it should be in 2D. My reason being that the art style of the movie, while enjoyable, is also very easy to get into uncanny valley with a smaller budget. That issue isn't as bad with 2D. I'd be fine either way if it were 2D or 3D, but honestly, I do have faith that a 3D series would turn out looking good, or at least decent, since compared to the movies, like for example with Madagascar, the TV shows, like the Penguins TV show, obviously isn't going to look as good, but then there's All Hail King Julian, which, yeah, still doesn't look as good as the movies, but it is a quantum leap from the Penguins of Madagascar. And as time has gone on, it really does feel like 3D animated shows are starting to close the gap between the quality of the movies versus the quality for television. So I really don't think it'd be that big of a downgrade, but that's just my opinion. Doublet says, regarding the Brill scene, it actually stumped me the first few times too, but then I realized he's actually covering for Ruby and himself. By this point of the film, Agatha is unaware of Ruby traveling to the ocean / visiting Grandmama. During the seagull scene, Brill admits Agatha would kill him if she found out Ruby was trying to visit Grandmama. All he has to do is claim that he went home empty-handed to ward off his sister's potential anger. Truthfully, I'm iffy about Nerissa and Chelsea being separate. I actually enjoy how Nerissa pretending to be her own daughter just goes to show how truly evil and determined she is. So apparently I was not alone on the whole Brill plot hole thing, but I was kind of foolish for thinking about it too hard. So I ended up missing the actual problem with that scene. Yes, Brill was protecting the secret about Ruby going to the Kraken Kingdom by making up the fake story about Grandmama hitting the roof. The problem, or rather the first problem, is that Brill had no reason to go back to Agatha to tell her this. Agatha at this point hates her mom and couldn't care less if she hit the roof. Then again, he could have just been using this as an excuse to eat the Gillman's food and hang out with his niece and nephew. The second, and bigger problem, is that this goes against how he was characterized in the earlier scene where he couldn't keep a secret. So hopefully that settles that. And I'll talk a little bit more about the Chelsea and Nerissa situation in the next comment, but honestly, I could do an entire video about that, again, if I decide to. Chug Hughes, I think, says, if this were to get a TV show, I'm thinking that they should do something similar to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, in which the show is a separate continuity from the movie. That way they could incorporate their old ideas of Chelsea and Nerissa being separate characters. Also, I can totally imagine Wendy Malick, Etta from the Owl House, voicing Grandmama instead of Jane Fonda. Well, I can't say I'm familiar with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the show or the movie, but I think I understand the approach to continuity that you're referring to, and it's not unheard of for DreamWorks either. The Penguins of Madagascar, yes, I know I'm bringing that show up again, that show can't possibly exist in the same continuity as the Madagascar movies, and I know Tom McGrath, one of the higher-ups at DreamWorks and the voice of Skipper, has even gone on record saying that they are parallel timelines. Like, the Penguin show is its own thing, but it has its own version of the events in the movies. If Ruby Gillman were to do this, DreamWorks could essentially reboot the property and cherry-pick the best aspects to carry over into a new continuity. They could keep how the film ended, but switch Nerissa and Chelsea into being mother and daughter. Or if they wanted to, they could go hard reset and completely rewrite the lore, tweak the character designs, and perhaps even adapt the events of the movie into a season-long arc, but with some plot details changed. As interesting as the second option sounds, I'd prefer the first, where it's a loose continuation of the movie. But even if they were strict with the continuity, I feel like there's a lot that can be salvaged from the ending that we got. Personally, I don't think that the Chelsea and Nerissa situation is a deal breaker. Also, I know Lana Condor has said that she'd be open to reprising the role of Ruby Gillman, so that's another reason I wouldn't want them to reboot. Or if they do, hopefully they'd bring her back. As for that Owl House comparison, that's another show that I'm not familiar with, so I had to look up some clips to hear for myself, and yeah, I agree, Etta does sound a lot like Grandmama. And for the final comment of this video, Get a Job says, it looks awesome as shit. It deserved to make $2 billion. Yep, I totally agree. Joking aside, I'm honestly kind of surprised that no DreamWorks movie has ever made $1 billion yet. The closest they ever got was Shrek 2, and that was nearly 20 years ago. Hopefully DreamWorks breaks that barrier someday, and I think Shrek 5 would be the most likely to do it, if Universal advertises it well. And that about wraps things up for this video, so feel free to leave some feedback on my upcoming plans, ask questions for the next comment response, or even suggest topics for future videos. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter or join my Discord community, the links to both will be in the description. And with all that said, I hope you enjoyed, have a nice day, and thank you for your time.